You are not supposed to be alive. Now, I don't mean that in some philosophical way, I mean it literally. Classical physics, the physics you learned in school, the physics of billiard balls and falling apples and neat little equations, that physics says the chemistry inside your cells is too slow, too clumsy, too random to do what it does. The reactions that keep you breathing right now should take thousands of years. Some of them should take longer than the age of the universe. And yet, here you are, breathing, thinking, listening to this. Something else is helping. And that something operates at the quantum level, at the very bottom of reality, where particles do not behave like tiny billiard balls at all. They behave like nothing you have ever seen. And your body, it turns out, has been exploiting this for billions of years. Well, the first thing I have to tell you is that this is not speculation. This is not some fringe idea floating around the edges of physics. This is real science, published in the best journals in the world, confirmed by experiments, and it changes everything we thought we knew about what it means to be alive. Let me start with a fact that should bother every biologist on the planet. You see, inside your body right now, there are enzymes, thousands of different kinds. And these enzymes accelerate chemical reactions by factors of 1 billion or more. Some of them speed things up by a factor of 1 trillion. Now, think about what that means. A reaction that should take 10,000 years to happen on its own, just sitting there waiting for molecules to bump into each other in the right way, that reaction happens in milliseconds inside your cells. Milliseconds. And classical chemistry, the chemistry you learned in school, it cannot fully explain this. Now, there is a standard framework called transition state theory. And it is a very good theory, I want to be clear about that. It explains how enzymes work by lowering the activation energy barrier. You see, imagine you have to push a boulder over a hill. The hill is the energy barrier. The enzyme comes along and, in effect, digs a trench through the hill so the boulder does not have to go quite so high. Very clever. And for many reactions, this explanation works beautifully. But here is the problem. For certain reactions, particularly ones involving protons and hydrogen atoms, the numbers still do not add up. The particles involved are heavy enough and the energy barriers are wide enough that even with the enzyme lowering the hill, classical thermal energy should not be able to push them over. You do the calculation. You put in the temperature of the human body, 37 degrees Celsius, which is not very hot at all. You put in the mass of the particle. You put in the width and height of the barrier. And the rate you get out is too slow, much too slow. The reaction should not be happening at the speed it is happening, and yet it is happening every second, in every cell, right now. So what is going on? Well, here is something that seems like it should not work but does. The particle does not go over the barrier. It goes through it, not metaphorically, literally. The wave function of the particle, which in quantum mechanics describes the probability of finding the particle at any given location, that wave function extends through the energy barrier. And there is a non-zero probability of the particle appearing on the other side without ever having enough energy to climb over the top. Physicists call this quantum tunneling, and I spent my career calculating probabilities like these. In quantum electrodynamics, we deal with particles doing impossible things all the time. An electron emits a photon, absorbs a photon, takes every possible path simultaneously. The math permits it, nature uses it. And your body, it turns out, depends on it for every second you stay alive. Think about that for a moment. The chemistry that keeps you alive is not purely classical. It has a quantum component. And if you remove that component, if you somehow force the particles in your body to behave strictly classically, the chemistry would slow down. Some reactions would effectively stop. You would not survive. Now, let me tell you about what I think is one of the most beautiful examples of quantum mechanics in all of biology: photosynthesis. You see, plants capture photons from the sun and convert that energy into chemical fuel. You eat the plants, or you eat the animals that ate the plants, and that is where your energy comes from. This is not news. You learned this in school. But what you probably did not learn is how astonishingly efficient this process is. In certain photosynthetic organisms, the efficiency of energy transfer from the point where the photon is captured to the point where the chemistry happens approaches 95%. 95%. Our best solar panels do not come close to that, and for decades, nobody could explain how. Here is the problem. The photon hits a structure called the antenna complex. That is where the light is captured. But the actual chemistry, the part where light energy gets converted into chemical energy, that happens somewhere else, at a place called the reaction center. And the energy has to travel from the antenna to the reaction center through a dense, warm, wet, noisy biological environment. Protein molecules everywhere, water molecules jiggling around, thermal vibration shaking everything. Classical physics predicts that the energy should bounce around randomly, like a ball in a pinball machine, losing most of itself as heat before it ever reaches the destination. The efficiency should be terrible. But it is not terrible, it is nearly perfect. And this is where it gets really interesting. In 2007, a man named Graham Fleming, working at UC Berkeley, published a landmark paper in the journal Nature. His group used ultra-fast laser spectroscopy. We are talking about laser pulses that last for femtoseconds, that is millionths of a billionth of a second. And they pointed these lasers at something called the Fenner-Matthews Olsen complex. Now, this is a photosynthetic protein found in green sulfur bacteria. Not the most glamorous organism in the world. But what Fleming's group found was extraordinary. They found evidence of long-lived quantum coherence at biological temperatures. You see, the energy was not hopping randomly from molecule to molecule like a classical particle bouncing around. It was behaving like a wave. It was exploring multiple pathways simultaneously as a quantum superposition, and the quantum interference between all those pathways was selecting the most efficient route. The system samples all possible paths, and the interference selects the optimal one. Nature discovered this principle billions of years before anyone wrote it down on a chalkboard. Think about that. And you know what? It got even more interesting. A 2014 follow-up study published in Nature Chemistry confirmed that quantum coherence effects exist in photosynthetic systems and showed something remarkable. The protein environment, all that warm, wet, noisy biological machinery, was not destroying the quantum coherence, it was actively sustaining it. The biological machinery is not just tolerating quantum effects, it is engineered to exploit them. Evolution built a quantum computer out of proteins and chlorophyll, and it runs at room temperature, which is something our best physicists and engineers still cannot do. Now, here is one that will surprise you. There is serious scientific evidence that you smell things using quantum mechanics. I know. You are thinking, how can that be? But let me tell you what happened. The conventional theory of olfaction, how your nose works, is called the lock and key model. A molecule floats into your nose. Its shape fits a specific receptor on a nerve cell, like a key fitting into a lock. That triggers a signal, and your brain says, ah, that is coffee, or that is a rose, or that is something terrible. Simple, elegant. And for a long time, everybody was satisfied with it. Except it does not explain everything. You see, there are molecules that have identical shapes but different molecular vibrations, and they smell completely different. And there are molecules with different shapes but similar vibrational frequencies, and they can smell the same. The lock and key model cannot account for this. The shape is the same, but the smell is different. How? In 1996, a biophysicist named Luca Turin proposed a radical alternative. He suggested that olfactory receptors do not just detect the shape of a molecule, they detect its vibrational frequency. And the mechanism he proposed is a quantum mechanical process called inelastic electron tunneling. Here is how it works. An electron in the receptor needs to tunnel across a gap from one side of the receptor to the other. But it can only do this if the molecule sitting in the receptor has a vibrational mode at exactly the right energy to assist the tunneling process. Different vibrational frequencies assist different tunneling events. Different tunneling events produce different signals. Different signals mean different smells. Now, this was controversial, very controversial. People said it was crazy, but then the evidence started coming in. In 2011, Franco and colleagues published a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, providing computational evidence supporting the vibrational theory. And then in 2013, a study by Gain and colleagues in PLOS1 showed something truly remarkable. They took molecules that were chemically identical, same shape, same everything, except in one version they replaced hydrogen atoms with deuterium atoms. Now, deuterium is just a heavier form of hydrogen, same chemistry, same shape, same lock and key, but different vibrational frequency because the heavier atom vibrates differently, and human subjects could tell them apart by smell. The lock and key model has no explanation for this result. None. But the quantum tunneling model predicts it perfectly. Your nose might be running a quantum spectrometer every time you smell coffee, and you never even noticed. Now let me tell you about something that I find absolutely extraordinary. European robins migrate thousands of kilometers every year with pinpoint accuracy. They fly from Scandinavia to the Mediterranean and back, and they navigate using Earth's magnetic field. But here is the thing. Earth's magnetic field is extraordinarily weak. We are talking about roughly 50 microtesla. That is about 100 times weaker than a refrigerator magnet. No classical chemical compass should be sensitive enough to detect such a feeble field. The energy involved is tiny compared to thermal noise. It should be completely drowned out. And yet the birds find their way year after year with remarkable precision. In 2000, a physicist named Thorsten Ritz proposed a mechanism, and it is beautiful. You see, in the bird's retina, there is a molecule called cryptochrome. When a photon of blue light hits this molecule, it creates a pair of molecules, each with an unpaired electron. Now, here is the quantum part. These two electrons are entangled. Their spins are correlated. They exist in a quantum superposition of spin states. And the Earth's magnetic field, weak as it is enough to influence the relative orientation of these entangled spins. That changes the chemistry of the radical pair reaction, and the bird's nervous system can detect the difference. Think about what this means. The bird literally sees the magnetic field as a pattern overlaid on its visual field. It sees where north is, and this is not just theory. In 2021, a paper published in Nature by Xu and colleagues demonstrated that the cryptochrome protein CRY4 in European robins is magnetically sensitive in a way that is consistent with the radical pair mechanism. A 2022 study confirmed that quantum coherence in these radical pairs can survive long enough at biological temperatures to be functionally relevant. This is quantum entanglement, the phenomenon Einstein called spooky action at a distance, operating inside a living bird's eye. Evolution did not just stumble onto quantum mechanics, it built precision instruments around it. Now, you see, all of these examples, the enzymes, the photosynthesis, the smell, the bird navigation, they are all remarkable. But let me tell you about one more that has, I think, the most enormous implications of all. Because the very thing that drives evolution, genetic mutation, may itself be a quantum process. You see, DNA base pairs are held together by hydrogen bonds, and these hydrogen bonds involve protons sitting in energy wells. Normally, the proton sits on one side of the bond and everything reads correctly. The base pair is in its standard form. The replication machinery comes along, reads the code, copies it faithfully, no problem. But quantum mechanics allows something strange. That proton can tunnel to the other side of the bond. When it does, the base pair shifts into what is called a tautomeric form. It looks different to the replication machinery. And if DNA replication happens while the proton is on the wrong side, the machinery reads the wrong code. It copies the wrong letter. A mutation occurs. Now, a man named Per Olaf Loden proposed this idea back in 1963, and for decades most people considered it speculative. Interesting, maybe, but unproven. Just a theoretical possibility. But then, in 2022, a study published in Physical Chemistry, Chemical Physics by Slocum, Al-Khalili, and Maynard used advanced quantum mechanical modeling, very detailed calculations, and they found that proton tunneling in DNA base pairs is not only possible, but occurs at biologically relevant rates. Now, the probability for any single base pair at any given moment is small, very small. But think about the numbers. Your body copies its entire DNA every time a cell divides. Billions of base pairs, billions of cell divisions over a lifetime. Small probabilities multiplied by enormous numbers produce certainty. Some fraction of mutations, the raw material of evolution, the thing that natural selection works on, are generated by quantum tunneling. Think about that. Quantum mechanics is not just helping life function, it is generating the variations that drive natural selection itself. The engine of evolution has a quantum component. That is not a footnote in biology. That is fundamental. You know, I once said that all things are made of atoms and that the atomic hypothesis is the single most important idea in science, and I still believe that. But here is what I did not say often enough. The atoms that make up living things are not acting classically. No, no, no. They are quantum objects following quantum rules. And life has figured out how to exploit those rules in ways that our best engineers, with all their technology, all their funding, all their clever designs, still cannot replicate. Photosynthesis achieves energy transfer efficiency that our best solar panels cannot touch. Bird navigation achieves magnetic sensitivity that our best instruments struggle to match. Enzyme catalysis achieves reaction speeds that our best industrial catalysts cannot approach. And the nose, your nose, may be running a quantum detection system more sophisticated than anything we have built in a laboratory. And all of it, every bit of it, runs on quantum mechanics operating in warm, wet, noisy biological environments. Now, this is the part that really gets me. Because every physics textbook says quantum coherence should be destroyed instantly in conditions like that. Thermal noise should overwhelm everything. Decoherence should wipe out any quantum effects in femtoseconds. And yet, life has found a way. Billions of years of evolution have produced quantum technology so sophisticated that we are only now, in the 21st century, beginning to understand that they even exist. The imagination of nature is far, far greater than the imagination of man. We think we are clever because we can build a quantum computer that works at temperatures near absolute zero, shielded from every vibration, isolated in a vacuum. And nature builds quantum devices that work inside a bird's eye at body temperature while the bird is flying through a rainstorm. We are just now learning how to read the blueprints. You see, there is a boundary that people like to draw between physics and biology. Physics is over here, biology is over there. Physics deals with particles and forces and equations. Biology deals with cells and organisms and evolution. And I understand why people draw that line. It makes things tidy. It makes the university departments easier to organize. But the line is not real. There is only physics. Biology is what physics does when it gets complicated enough. Life is what atoms do when they have been arranging and rearranging themselves for 4 billion years under the pressure of natural selection. And the atoms do not stop being quantum mechanical just because they happen to be inside a living thing. You are not a classical machine. You are a quantum system. Every breath you take involves enzymes that rely on quantum tunneling. Every meal you eat was ultimately powered by photosynthesis that uses quantum coherence. Every smell you detect might involve quantum electron tunneling in your nose. Every cell that divides carries the possibility of quantum-generated mutations that feed the engine of evolution itself. And if birds can see magnetic fields through quantum entanglement in their eyes, who knows what other quantum processes are running inside living things that we have not even discovered yet. I said at the beginning that you are not supposed to be alive. That classical physics says the chemistry is too slow, too clumsy, too random. And that is true. Classical physics alone cannot account for what is happening inside you. But quantum physics can. The deepest laws of physics, the ones that govern the behavior of the very smallest things in the universe, those laws are not just relevant to particle accelerators and laser laboratories. They are relevant to you. They are operating in you, right now, this moment. The most extraordinary physics in the known universe is not happening in some distant galaxy or inside some billion-dollar machine. It is happening inside you. And we are only at the beginning of understanding this. Quantum biology is a young field. There are arguments about the details, there are experiments that need to be done, there are mechanisms that need to be worked out. Nobody has all the answers yet. And you know what? I think that is wonderful. It means there is more to discover. It means we are still at the frontier. We keep looking. That is science. But what we do know, what the evidence already tells us, is something I find deeply beautiful. Life is not separate from the quantum world. Life is the quantum world's greatest achievement. 4 billion years of evolution, selecting and refining and optimizing, have produced molecular machines that exploit quantum effects with a precision and sophistication that takes your breath away. You are made of atoms, yes, but those atoms are doing things that no classical description can capture. They are tunneling and superposing and entangling and interfering. And all of that astonishing quantum choreography is what makes you possible. You are not supposed to be alive, not according to classical physics. But classical physics is not the whole story. It never was. The whole story includes the quantum, and the quantum changes everything. And that, I think, is beautiful.